It was just another sunny afternoon in Los Angeles. Jake Paul, wearing a plain hoodie and shades, was cruising through the streets in his brand new electric sports car, camera mounted on the dash, recording what he thought would be another casual vlog. He wasn't doing anything wild this time. No stunts, no pranks, and just driving, talking to his fans, and enjoying the day. But then, flashing red and blue lights appeared in his rearview mirror. Jake frowned. "What the? I wasn't even speeding," he muttered. Pulling over to the side of the road, a police cruiser stopped right behind him. The officer stepped out, tall, tense, and already radiating authority. His hand rested near his holster. His walk wasn't calm, it was charged. Jake rolled down his window. "Good afternoon, officer. Did I do something wrong?" The officer didn't answer right away. Instead, he scanned the car slowly, up and down, as if Jake were hiding something. "License and registration," the cop said coldly. Jake reached slowly into the glove box. "Sure thing, sir. It's right here." The officer's tone grew sharper. "Keep your hands where I can see them." Jake froze. "Sir, I'm just grabbing my license. Did I tell you to talk?" The cop snapped. For a moment, everything felt still. The hum of traffic faded. Jake blinked, confused, calm, but alert. Something didn't feel right. The tension in the air was thick, way beyond a normal traffic stop. A couple walking nearby stopped to watch. A car passing by slowed down. Someone pulled out their phone to record. Jake sighed quietly and turned on his own dashcam livestream. "This is crazy," he whispered. The officer moved closer, peering into the window. "Step out of the car." Jake tilted his head, surprised. "Why, what's going on?" The cop's eyes narrowed. "Just do as I say." Jake hesitated, one hand on the door, the other gripping the steering wheel. He didn't know it yet. But in the next 5 minutes, this same officer would be the one in handcuffs. The officer's voice hardened. "I said step out of the car." Jake looked up calmly, hands still visible on the wheel. "Sir, I'm happy to cooperate, but may I know what this is about?" The cop's lips tightened. "You were swerving. Looked like you were trying to avoid me." Jake blinked. "Avoid you?" "No, I was out of the car, now!" The shout made a few heads turn. Two teenagers who had been skating by stopped in their tracks. One whispered, "Yo, that's Jake Paul," and instantly pulled out a phone. Jake sighed, realizing what was about to happen. He slowly unbuckled his seatbelt and stepped out, keeping both hands up in the air. The afternoon sun glared off his car. A quiet buzz from the growing crowd filled the air. Every move Jake made was calm, measured. The officer, however, seemed more irritated by that calm. "Back up. Face the vehicle." Jake complied, but his tone remained even. "Sir, I just want you to know, I'm recording this for everyone's safety." That sentence hit a nerve. The cop's jaw tightened. "Turn that camera off." "I can't do that, sir. It's my right to film." The officer took a slow step closer, his shadow stretching across the pavement. "You think being some internet star gives you special rights?" Jake didn't flinch. "No, sir. I think being human gives me rights." The tension was electric now. The cop's face reddened. He looked around, realizing more people were watching. A woman across the street had her phone raised, live streaming the entire thing. Jake could hear her faint voice. "Oh my God, that's Jake Paul. He's not doing anything wrong." The officer noticed her too, and it only made him angrier. "Face the car and keep your mouth shut." He barked. Jake nodded once and turned. His phone, clipped to his chest mount, captured every second. He tried to keep his voice calm. "Guys, this is exactly why I record everything," he said softly to his viewers. "This is real life, not a prank." The cop began searching the car without permission. "Sir, you can't do that without a warrant," Jake said politely. The officer turned sharply. "Are you a lawyer now?" "No," Jake answered. "But I know the law." The man's hand hovered near his weapon again. That tiny movement made the crowd gasp. A man shouted, "Hey!" "There's no need for that. He's cooperating." But the cop ignored him, glaring at Jake. "Keep talking and we'll see where that attitude gets you." Jake exhaled slowly. He wasn't angry and he was focused. He knew one wrong move could make things spiral out of control. A few more people gathered on the sidewalk, phones raised. Someone yelled, "We got you on camera, officer." That only made the cop bark louder. "Everyone back up. This is a police matter." Jake turned his head slightly. "Officer, please, I'm not resisting. Let's just handle this peacefully." The officer hesitated, but pride wouldn't let him back down. He leaned close, voice low and threatening. "You vloggers think you can do whatever you want. Not today," Jake simply said. "I'm not trying to prove anything, sir. I just want respect." Then he looked straight at the crowd, winging straight into the camera lens. "Have you ever seen someone get treated unfairly by authority?" He paused a beat, his tone steady but emotional. "Comment below. Tell me where you're watching this from. Your city, your country, because this kind of thing happens everywhere, and people need to see it." The chat on his live stream started blowing up. "Watching from Manila. Greetings from London. Justice for Jake from Brazil." Messages flooded in from around the world as the number of viewers shot past 30,000. The officer noticed the flashing comments on Jake's screen. His confusion was clear. He hadn't realized the scene was already global. "What's that? You streaming this?" Jake nodded. "Yes, sir. Thousands of people are watching. I just want transparency." For the first time, the cop seemed uncertain. He stepped back slightly, looking around at all the cameras pointed at him, but instead of de-escalating, he doubled down, voice shaking with anger. "Turn it off." "Last warning." Jake stood tall. "With respect, sir, I can't. This is my protection." The silence that followed was suffocating. Everyone waited for the next move, the next word, the next mistake. And then, slowly, the officer's hand inched toward his holster. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Someone screamed, "He's going for his gun!" Jake didn't move. His heart raced, but his eyes never left the officer's face. He spoke quietly, "Sir, please, don't do this." But the officer's anger had already reached its breaking point. The next few seconds would change everything. The air turned electric. No one spoke. No one even breathed. Jake stood completely still, his hands raised, heart pounding in his chest. The officer's hand gripped his gun, finger twitching dangerously close to the trigger. A woman screamed from across the street, "Don't shoot! He's not doing anything." The sound echoed through the block, but the cop didn't blink. His eyes stayed locked on Jake, full of adrenaline and suspicion. Jake's voice was calm but firm. "Sir, please put the gun down. I'm not armed." "I'm cooperating," the officer barked back. "Don't move." "Not 1 inch." Jake froze, not out of fear, but because he knew one wrong move could change everything. He'd seen videos like this before, but never thought he'd be one. His live stream was still running, thousands watching in real time. The chat was exploding. "What's happening?"
"He's gonna shoot him!"
"This is insane." Jake's voice cracked slightly, but he kept it together. "Sir, please, I'm not your enemy. Let's talk." The officer's breathing was heavy now. The veins in his neck bulged. "Step away from the car." Jake took one slow step back, his palms trembling slightly. The officer's gun followed him, eyes darting, nervous, unstable. People shouted from the sidewalk, "He's unarmed. Put your weapon away." "You're being recorded, officer." But the man didn't care, or maybe he was too deep into his own panic to back out now. Jake's team, who had been following in another car, ran over from across the street, yelling for the cop to calm down. "Sir, we're his crew."
"He's not armed."
"Please, lower the weapon." One of them tried to step forward, but the cop snapped, "Stay back or I'll arrest you too." Jake swallowed hard, trying to defuse the situation. He raised his voice, not in anger, but authority. "Officer, I respect what you do. I really do. But this," he motioned slightly toward the gun, "this isn't how it should go. You're making a mistake." The cop's hand trembled. His eyes flicked from Jake to the crowd. For the first time, you could see uncertainty in them. Jake took a slow breath. "You have nothing to fear from me. I'm not resisting. I'm not armed. I'm just asking you to see me as a person, not a problem." Those words hung heavy in the air. Even the crowd fell silent for a moment. The tension was unbearable. Every camera, every phone, every live viewer around the world waited to see what would happen next. The officer's jaw clenched. Then, his gun lifted slightly higher. Jake's fans watching live began spamming the comments. "No way. This is going too far. He needs backup now." But Jake stayed composed. He had learned how to control pressure inside a boxing ring, and right now he was in a different kind of fight. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't insult the officer. Instead, he looked straight into the barrel pointed at him and said softly, "Sir, if something happens here, it's not just your career that ends. It's your peace of mind and forever. The officer hesitated. For a split second, his grip loosened. Jake continued. You don't want to be remembered for the worst 5 minutes of your life. Let's both walk away with respect. That sentence pierced the tension like a knife. The officer's breathing slowed. The crowd murmured. And then, the gun wavered. He didn't holster it yet, but something in his eyes changed. Doubt crept in. Jake saw it and took the smallest risk, one step forward, palm still up. I'm not your enemy, he repeated. I'm someone's son just like you. Please, don't let anger ruin everything. The cop's voice dropped low. You think I'm scared? Jake shook his head. I think you're human, and that's okay. The crowd applauded softly, not mockingly, but out of relief that the situation hadn't exploded. A teenager yelled, "Stay calm, Jake," and Jake turned to the camera, voice steady, eyes burning with emotion. The sound of sirens cut through the thick silence. A second police cruiser sped around the corner and screeched to a stop behind the first one. For a brief moment, everyone froze. The original officer still had his gun pointed, his arms trembling, while the crowd shouted over one another. Then, from somewhere in the crowd, a voice yelled, "That's Jake Paul." That's the YouTuber. The ripple was instant. More people began whispering, then shouting, "He's famous. Put the gun down, that's Jake Paul." Phones shot up higher into the air, flashes blinking like fireworks. The first officer turned, startled by the sudden recognition. His grip on the gun loosened just a bit, confusion flashing across his face. He looked at Jake, then back at the growing crowd. "What did you say?" he barked, trying to regain control, but the crowd was already fired up. "He's a celebrity, man. You're pointing a gun at Jake Paul. Everyone's live streaming this." The backup officer, a younger man with calm eyes, quickly stepped out of his car. He saw the drawn gun, the panicked crowd, and the camera lights everywhere. He moved fast, one hand raised, voice steady. Hey, what's going on here?" The first cop didn't answer. He just shouted, "Stay back, officer." He was resisting. Jake immediately spoke up, clear and controlled. "No, sir. I haven't resisted once. It's all on camera." The younger officer glanced at Jake's chest-mounted camera, then at the dozens of phones pointed at them. "Everything's on video?" he asked. Jake nodded. "Everything." That was the moment the balance began to shift. The backup officer took a slow step closer, carefully reading the situation. "All right," he said softly. "Everyone take a breath. Sir, lower your weapon now." The first officer snapped, "He's dangerous." "He was arguing with me." Jake interrupted gently. "I never argued. I just asked why I was pulled over." The crowd erupted again, shouting in support. "We saw it. He didn't do anything wrong." The backup officer kept his focus on the gun. "Holster your weapon. This isn't procedure." But the first officer's pride was boiling over. His hand trembled, his face red. "You don't understand. He was filming me, trying to provoke." Jake cut in again, calmly but firmly. "Sir, you aimed your gun at me in front of 100 witnesses. Please, just stop." That sentence hit like a thunderclap. The crowd fell silent. Even the backup officer seemed frozen for a second. The first cop's hand dropped slightly. The gun no longer pointed directly at Jake, but still drawn. The younger officer moved quickly. "Put it down," he ordered again, firmer this time. "Now!" The silence was so heavy you could hear the wind move through the street. Finally, the first officer lowered the gun, but his face burned with humiliation. He muttered something under his breath, something no one could quite hear, and stepped back. The crowd exhaled in unison. Applause broke out, shaky, relieved, and full of emotion. Jake didn't cheer. He just closed his eyes for a second, breathing out. Then he looked at the younger officer. "Thank you," he said quietly. The new officer nodded. "Stay where you are for now, sir. We'll figure this out." But the crowd wasn't staying quiet anymore. A woman near the front yelled, "You could have killed him." Another man shouted, "This needs to go online right now." And it already was. Jake's live stream had passed 500,000 viewers. Comments poured in faster than they could appear on screen. "He's being racially profiled. This cop needs to be fired. Jake's handling this better than anyone would." Across the globe, people were watching the standoff unfold in real time. Jake turned slightly to the camera mounted on his chest. He spoke softly, but every word carried weight. "This isn't about fame or followers. It's about what's right. I'm not going to fight hate with hate. I just want fairness. The crowd erupted again, not in chaos, but in support. The younger officer stepped forward and whispered something to his partner, too quiet for anyone else to hear. The first officer's face went pale. He looked shaken, nervous, almost panicked, Jake noticed, but said nothing. He stood still, quiet, dignified. Then the younger officer turned back toward Jake. Sir, please stay calm. We're going to review everything. The dash cam, your recording, the witnesses' videos. Just stay right there, Jake nodded. Of course, officer. I'll cooperate fully. The older cop stepped back, face flushed and jaw clenched. He holstered his weapon, avoiding eye contact with everyone. The tension was finally breaking, but this story was far from over. Because in just a few minutes, those very videos and the crowd's footage, the live stream, the dash cam, would expose everything. And when that truth came out, it wouldn't just save Jake Paul's reputation, it would end the officer's career. The gun was finally down, but the truth was just coming out. And when the videos went public, the officer who started it all would wish he'd never stopped Jake Paul that day. If a cop pointed a gun at you for no reason, what would you do? Be honest. Walk away, argue, or stay calm like Jake? Tell me in the comments. I'm reading every one of them. The live stream's viewer count hit 100,000. Every second, hearts and comments flooded the screen. But in real life, tension still lingered. The officer's gun was still up. The situation hadn't ended, and it had just paused, and that pause was about to break in the most unexpected way, because within the next minute a second police cruiser would arrive, and everything would flip. Another officer pulled up, saw what was happening, and what he did next turned this entire story upside down. The cop's hand was on his gun and the crowd was screaming, and Jake knew one wrong move could end everything. But what happened next shocked everyone. You won't believe how fast this situation flipped, and how Jake Paul stayed calm while the cop lost everything. The crowd was buzzing. The gun was finally holstered, but the tension hadn't vanished. It had simply changed shape. Now, everyone wanted answers. The younger officer, calm, professional, and visibly uneasy about his partner's behavior, turned to Jake. Sir, can you tell me exactly what happened from the start? Jake nodded slowly. Of course. He gestured toward his car, still idling a few feet away. I was filming a vlog, just driving, talking to my followers. I wasn't speeding, I didn't run a light. He pulled me over, didn't explain why, and told me to step out. When I asked what for, he went straight for his gun. The crowd murmured in disbelief. The senior cop clenched his fists, his pride wounded. That's not true, he barked. He was being disrespectful. Jake turned toward him, not angry, just firm. I asked you a simple question, officer. What did I do wrong? The man's face reddened even more. You had an attitude. Jake stepped forward, voice calm but powerful. An attitude? Or confidence? The officer didn't answer. He just looked away, grinding his teeth. The younger cop interjected, his tone sharp now. All right, enough. We're reviewing the footage. Everyone here's got a recording, right? Hands shot up across the crowd. Phones everywhere. Jake reached for his chest camera and unclipped it. You can have mine too. It's all there. The younger officer accepted it carefully. Thank you, sir. Then turning toward his partner, he said in a low voice, We'll go over this in the car. The older cop muttered something but didn't argue this time. His confidence was gone, replaced by the uneasy realization that he might have gone too far. Jake took a breath and turned toward the bystanders. I appreciate everyone recording, he said sincerely. This isn't just about me. It's about accountability. That's all I ever wanted. Applause erupted again, this time louder, stronger, unified. Someone shouted, You handled that like a champ, Jake. Jake smiled faintly, shaking his head. It's not about being a champ. It's about staying human, even when you're tested. The younger officer finished speaking quietly with his partner and came back toward Jake. Sir, I'm going to take your statement, and we'll get this sorted out. Jake nodded, calm as ever. Absolutely. The crowd slowly began to disperse, though dozens stayed nearby, whispering and recording the aftermath. The live stream was still running, though Jake hadn't touched it once. His fans were losing their minds online. He's so composed. The cop's done for. This is going to blow up everywhere. Within minutes, clips were already spreading on TikTok, X, and YouTube. Headlines were forming in real time. Jake Paul held at gunpoint during traffic stop. Cop pulls weapon on influencer, crowd saves the day. The younger officer glanced at his radio. Dispatch was already asking what was happening. He turned to Jake again. "Mr. Paul, I have to say you handled that better than most would." Jake shrugged slightly. "Anger never wins, officer. It only adds fuel." That line hit deep. Even the people nearby nodded. The older cop, meanwhile, sat on the hood of his car, hands shaking, staring at the ground. The weight of what he'd done was sinking in. The younger officer looked at him, then sighed. "Sir," he said quietly, "I have to place you under temporary detainment while this is reviewed. Your weapon will be secured." The crowd gasped. The senior cop looked up sharply. "What, you can't?" But it was too late. The younger officer was following protocol. "You drew your weapon without verified threat. That's a serious breach. You know the policy." The older man's eyes darted around. At Jake, at the cameras, at the hundreds of people filming. His world was collapsing live. Jake didn't smirk. He didn't gloat. He just looked at the man and said softly, "I don't hate you. I just hope you learn something from this." That line silenced the entire block. Even the officer paused mid-handcuff. Eyes softening slightly, Jake continued, voice steady, humble, sincere. Everyone deserves respect, even the ones who forget how to give it. The crowd clapped again, this time with emotion, not excitement, respect. It wasn't about fame anymore. It wasn't about views or headlines. It was about dignity. The younger officer nodded at Jake in quiet appreciation. "We'll take it from here, sir. Thank you for staying calm." Jake replied, "I just did what anyone should. Stay peaceful even when it's hard. Be honest. Could you stay calm if someone pointed a gun at you for no reason? Type yes if you'd keep your composure like Jake, or no if you'd lose control. I want to see how many of you could handle that kind of pressure." As the officers walked back to their cars, one embarrassed, one professional, the crowd slowly parted. Jake stood there quietly, watching the sunset bleed across the sky. He knew this moment wasn't just a headline. It was a mirror. For everyone watching, for every officer, every fan, every critic. Because sometimes the most powerful punch is the one you don't throw. But Jake had no idea the video wasn't just trending. It was exploding worldwide. And within hours that same officer's life would change forever. By nightfall, the video had already spread like wildfire. Jake hadn't even posted it himself. He didn't need to. Clips were everywhere. TikTok, X, formerly Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. Every major outlet was sharing the same 30-second moment. The instant a police officer pulled a gun on Jake Paul, and Jake refused to lose his cool. Hashtags were trending globally. Justice for Jake. Power of calm. No one above the law within 4 hours. The footage had racked up 25 million views. The entire internet was talking about it. Newscasters replayed the scene over and over. The trembling gun, the shouting crowd, Jake's calm voice saying, "You don't want to be remembered for the worst 5 minutes of your life." That quote alone became a global headline. Some called it poetic. Others called it leadership. Even people who didn't like Jake Paul, people who had criticized him for years, were suddenly praising his composure. Never thought I'd say this, but Jake handled that better than anyone could. He turned chaos into a life lesson. This might be the moment he finally earns respect. Meanwhile, the police department was in full crisis mode. A statement was released at 10:43 p.m. "The department is aware of the incident involving one of our officers and Mr. Jake Paul. An internal investigation has been initiated immediately." But the internet wasn't satisfied with investigation. They wanted accountability. Jake's fans flooded the department's social media pages demanding answers. Reporters camped outside the police precinct. Even celebrities were tweeting support. Jake Paul just showed what grace under pressure looks like. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. That officer needs to be held responsible. Proud of Jake's composure. LeBron James. It wasn't just entertainment anymore. It had become a movement. The next morning, Jake woke up to over 40 missed calls, hundreds of texts, and millions of mentions. His team sat around the living room, scrolling through screens filled with headlines. His brother Logan looked at him, shaking his head. "Bro, this is crazy. You went from a traffic stop to world news in one night." Jake didn't smile. He just stared at the TV where the news anchor was saying his name for the 100th time. Jake Paul has yet to make a public statement, she said. But millions are waiting to hear his thoughts. Jake sighed. Then I guess I better say something worth listening to. He grabbed his phone and opened Instagram Live. Within seconds, 1 million viewers joined. He looked straight into the camera. No filters, no effects, no edits. His voice was calm, his tone serious. Yesterday, something happened that could have ended very differently. A man with authority let fear take over. But I'm not here to attack him. I'm here to remind everyone. Fear and power are a dangerous mix. He paused, the screen filled with hearts and comments. That officer made a mistake. A big one. But if I respond with hate, I become part of the same cycle. So instead, I'm choosing respect, and not for what he did, but for what we can learn from it. The comment feed exploded. Preach. Respect to Jake. This is growth, Jake continued. We live in a world where cameras see everything. But what matters most is what we choose to show when the world is watching. Anger or grace. Ego or empathy. I chose peace, and not because I'm weak, but because I'm tired of watching anger destroy people. His voice cracked slightly, raw and real. If one kid watches that video and learns to stay calm instead of reacting with rage, then maybe all this was worth it. A flood of hearts filled the screen. Tears, claps, emojis, a digital standing ovation. Jake looked down for a moment, then back up. I hope that officer learned something too.
I don't want him fired.
I want him changed. Because real justice isn't about revenge, it's about reflection. That line hit home. It was shared by every major media page within minutes. If you believe calm is stronger than anger, type respect in the comments. I want to see how many people still believe in handling chaos with peace. Hours later, an official update came from the police department. The officer involved in the incident had been suspended, without pay pending investigation. They confirmed that Jake's footage and multiple witness videos showed no sign of resistance or threat. In other words, Jake Paul was completely innocent. The announcement hit every news outlet like a bomb. Clips of Jake's speech played on loop. News anchors called it the calm that changed a cop. Jake sat quietly in his kitchen that night, phone buzzing nonstop. His manager smiled. You just changed your entire public image, man. People see you differently now. Jake exhaled slowly. I didn't do it for that, he said. I did it because someone had to show what staying calm really looks like. He looked out the window at the Los Angeles skyline, glowing under the night. For once, he wasn't thinking about fame, views, or boxing titles. He was thinking about control. Not the kind that dominates, but the kind that brings peace. But Jake's calm wasn't just trending. It was transforming lives. Because what happened next turned his message into a global movement. 3 days later, the entire world had seen it. The clip of Jake Paul staying calm while staring down a gun had become more than viral. It had become symbolic. Schools were using it in discussions about restraint and respect. Police departments were quietly showing it during training. And millions of fans were calling it the 5-minute lesson on self-control. Jake hadn't posted another word since his viral live stream. He'd said what he needed to say, and let silence do the rest. Then one morning, his phone buzzed with an unexpected message. It was from the police department. The officer involved would like to meet privately and issue a public apology. Are you open to it? Jake stared at the text for a long time. He could have ignored it. He could have gone online and celebrated his victory. But instead he simply replied, yes, let's talk. The next day, in a small community center, cameras rolled once again. Not for drama, but for healing. The officer walked in slowly, head bowed. His uniform looked heavier than before, when weighed down by guilt. He stood before Jake, voice trembling slightly. Mr. Paul, I'm sorry. I let fear, ego, and assumption control me. I forgot the oath I took, to protect, not provoke. You showed more discipline in that moment than I did. The room was silent. Jake looked at him, eyes steady but kind. I accept your apology, he said softly. We all make mistakes. What matters is what we learn from them. The officer nodded, visibly relieved. I'm taking full responsibility. I'll cooperate with the investigation, and I'm starting training again, this time to do it right. That moment, captured by every camera in the room, wasn't about punishment anymore. It was about growth. Jake stepped forward and extended his hand. The officer hesitated, then shook it. The flash of cameras filled the air, but for once, no one was chasing clicks. They were witnessing closure. Later that night, Jake posted a short clip of that handshake with a single caption: "Forgiveness is the final round." Within hours, it became the most shared post of the week. Celebrities, athletes, and even police officers reposted it with their own words of support. Real strength isn't throwing punches. It's showing grace. This is how change begins. Respect to Jake for ending it with peace. Jake's message had turned into a global movement. The hashtag respect was now attached to millions of posts from people sharing their own stories of patience, calm, and empathy. TV networks called it the Jake Paul redemption arc. But Jake didn't see it that way. In an interview a week later, he smiled faintly and said, "It's not redemption. It's realization. We're all capable of losing control, and the real power is learning not to." He looked directly into the camera. Sincere, grounded, changed. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. You don't have to shout to be heard. Sometimes the quietest person in the room has the loudest message. That line went viral. All over again. If you believe no one should be judged by appearance or fame, and that calm is stronger than chaos, type respect in the comments. Let's spread Jake's message to every corner of the world.